The absolute truth can be understood in three features: impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here it is admitted that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the last word in understanding the absolute truth. Even though the four Kumaras were instructed by their great learned father Brahma, they could not actually understand the absolute truth. They could only understand the supreme absolute truth when they personally saw the personality of Godhead with their own eyes. In other words, if one sees or understands the supreme personality of Godhead, the other two features of the absolute truth, namely impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma, are also automatically understood. Therefore, the Kumaras confirm, you are the ultimate absolute truth. The impersonalist may argue that since the Supreme Personality of Godhead was so nicely decorated, he was therefore not the absolute truth. But here it is confirmed that all the variegatedness of the absolute platform is constituted of Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness. In the material world, any quality, goodness, passion, or ignorance, is contaminated. Even the quality of goodness here in the material world is not free from the tinges of passion and ignorance. But in the transcendental world, only pure goodness without any tinge of passion or ignorance exists. Therefore, the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his variegated pastimes and paraphernalia are all pure Sattva Guna. Such variegatedness in pure goodness is exhibited eternally by the Lord for the satisfaction of the devotee. The devotee does not want to see the Supreme Personality of Absolute Truth in voidness or impersonalism. In one sense, absolute transcendental variegatedness is meant only for the devotees, not for others. Because this distinct feature of transcendental variegatedness can be understood only by the mercy of the Supreme Lord and not by mental speculation or the ascending process. It is said that one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead when one is even slightly favored by him. Otherwise, without his mercy, a man may speculate for thousands of years and not understand what is actually the absolute truth. This mercy can be perceived by the devotee when he is completely freed from contamination. It is stated, therefore, that only when all contamination is rooted out and the devotee is completely detached from material attractions, can he receive the mercy of the Lord. So we are seeing this part of the Bhagavatam. Now we are hearing Kumaras speak. They have come to Vaikunta. They were prevented from entering the gates of Vaikunta by the doorkeepers. So they were upset that their eager desire, that eagerness to see the Lord was obstructed by them. So they cursed the doorkeepers. And the doorkeepers accepted that curse. And then the Lord himself has appeared. And the Lord, how did he appear? He appeared with his entourage. He appeared with his consort, Lakshmi Devi. He has appeared with Garuda. Lord has appeared with all his ornaments. He is wearing a fresh flower garland, and he has the Shankha Chakra, Gada Padma, and he has the Kaustuba jewel. In all of this splendor, the Lord has appeared. And now the Kumaras are awestruck seeing that, because Kumaras were trained and they were perfected in Akshara Jusham. They were attached to Akshara state of absolute truth, which is the impersonal understanding that there is no form, there is no variety, there is no variegatedness, there are no feelings, there is just eternal existence. That was their realization. And now all of a sudden, they are seeing form, Vishnu, his paraphernalia, and Vishnu is speaking, and the doorkeepers are repentant, or they're feeling sorry, and all of these things they are experiencing. And now they have begun to say, Tam Tvam Vidhama Bhagavan Paramatma Tattvam. Now we understand Vidama. Now Samprati Vidama. Now we understand Paramatma Tattvam. That you are that absolute personality of Godhead, and you are the ultimate in Param, in Atma Tattvam. In the understanding of the absolute truth, you are the last word. You are the final word. Tvam Paramatma Tattvam Samprati Vidhama. Now we understand this. You are the supreme absolute truth. And then they are saying, Satvena Sampratiratim Rachayantam Esham. Satvena Rachayantam. And all of this we are seeing manifestation. The spiritual abode, the Lord and his entourage and his associates and all his ornamentation and his carrier Garuda and the spiritual world. This is Satvena Rachayantam. This is not a manifestation of matter. This is a manifestation of pure goodness. Satvena Rachayantam. And Ratimesham. Ratim Rachayantam. And out of great love and affection, you have manifested this. We will read that in the purport more. Yattenu tapa vidithair drudha bhakti yoga. But this can be understood, anutapa vidithair, only by your mercy. And what is the process? Drudha bhakti yoga, by unflinching. Prabhupada has used unflinching devotional. So drudha bhakti yoga, udgrantayo hrudhi, and one should have granthi, knots in the heart, udgrantha, and to completely remove the knots or untie the knots or free the heart. Udgrantayo hrudi vidhuhu. In that state one can understand by great sages, munayaha, viragaha, than those who are completely free from material attractions. They can understand. We know that you are the supreme absolute truth. Vidhama param atma tattvam. Tvam vidhama tvam paramatma tattvam. The personality of Godhead who manifests his transcendental form in the uncontaminated mode of pure goodness. Satvena rachayantam. This transcendental eternal form of your personality can be understood only by your mercy. Yattenu tapa vidithair. Through unflinching devotional service, drudha bhakti yogair, by great sages, munayaha, whose hearts have been purified in the devotional way. Udgrantayo hrudhi, udgrantayo viragaha hrudhi, vidhur munaya. So these are very wonderful words of the Kumaras, and we will see further very interesting points that Srila Prabhupada is pointing out in the purport. First of all, Srila Prabhupada is saying here that the state Satvena Rachayantam, that all the spiritual world is a manifestation of pure goodness. Pure goodness is known as technically Vishuddha Sattva. In the material world there is sattva guna, but even sattva guna in the material world, although it is the highest, it is generally contaminated by rajas and tamas. And so it is known as Mishra Sattva. Prabhupada explains all this in elaborate purports in Chaitanya Charitamrita, that what you see in the material world is Mishra Tattva, mixed goodness, and what you see in the spiritual world is Vishuddha Sattva, or pure goodness. And that is what is intended here, Sattvena Rachayantam. All this manifestation that we are experiencing here in the spiritual world is a manifestation of Vishuddha Sattva. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also explains that on the basis of scriptures, these are all there in the scriptures, but then it's in different places, and a proper understanding is presented by Acharyas. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself, who came after several other Acharyas, have progressively and greater and greater revelation they had done of the absolute truth. And finally, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is further explaining. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, in the spiritual world, everything is a manifestation of internal energy. And the material world is a manifestation of the external energy of the Lord. And we are all familiar, Prabhupada saying that we belong to the marginal energy. Now further in the Vedic literatures it is described that the internal energy is made of 3 primary energies. All of them are transcendental internal potency of the Lord. One energy is known as Sandhini Shakti, and that is the energy by which the Lord maintains his existence. Lord's existential energy, that is the Sandhini Shakti. And there is a second transcendental potency by which the Lord knows himself and causes others to know him. That is known as Samvit Shakti. So, Lord knows himself and causes others to know him. The transcendental knowledge, it's actually a manifestation of the Samvit Shakti of the Lord. And the third energy is known as the Hladini Shakti, the transcendental potency by which the Lord possesses bliss and causes others to possess bliss. That is the Hladini Shakti. So that Shakti which gives him pleasure and by which he gives pleasure to the devotees in the spiritual world, that is an interplay of the Hladini Shakti. Now these 3 Shaktis, when they are manifested and exhibited, that atmosphere is called the Vishuddha Sattva atmosphere, and in that atmosphere or on that platform, spiritual variegatedness is manifest. So that spiritual variegatedness is experienced by those who are in the Vishuddha Sattva stage. And even when the Lord appears in the material world, that Vishuddha Sattva stage is manifest even in the material world. That is why Krishna says, Sambhavami Atma Mayaya. By my internal energy, I descend even when I come to this material world. It is not that when he comes to the material world, he becomes influenced by material energy. No, he is never. Sattvam Rajastama Iti Guna Jivasya Naiva Me. This is another verse that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quotes. Prabhupada mentions this. This is from Uddhava's teachings in the 11th canto. Sattvam Rajastama Iti Guna Jivasya Naiva Me. This influences Jiva and not me. He's never touched by the 3 modes of material nature. Na eva me Rajastama Iti Guna Jivasya is influenced. Jivas are influenced, but I am never influenced. This is the statement. Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma chame divyam. And one who has understood this, evam yo vetti tattvataha, one who has understood the transcendental personality, what is the reality about Krishna, about his appearance, about the different pastimes that he performs, what is the reality about that? If he understands that, then he is freed from material existence. Punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. So in other words, Krishna's appearance, Krishna's personality, Krishna's activities, there is something very mysterious about it. It's not just mundane, it's not just ordinary. So this is an important aspect. And so here, Sattvena Rachayantam. This, all the Rachayantam, Rachayati is the creation or the composition or the manifestation is Sattvena Rachayantam. It is a manifestation of that pure goodness. It is a manifestation on the platform of Vishuddha Sattva. And this can be understood. Next, another next point that Prabhupada is mentioning here is a very special point is brought out here, that this manifestation of spiritual variegatedness, because the Kumaras are not ordinary people. They are also realized people. Akshara Jusham. They were fully realized in the absolute truth, in the impersonal manifestation. They were not materialistic people. They were also pure at heart. So they were already familiar with the impersonal aspect of the absolute. But suddenly now they are experiencing spiritual variegatedness. They had so far experienced spiritual oneness. They were not familiar that there will be varieties, that there is eternal existence, all pervading and shining eternal existence, and we are part of it, we are one with it. That was the kind of a realization they had. But now suddenly they are seeing, apart from us, there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and He has got so many entourage and all His abhushanas and all of those things. They are suddenly seeing, and now they are seeing how this has all happened. Now they are saying, now we understand something more than what we had understood so far. Now, Samprati, they are saying, Samprati, now we understand something more than what we had understood so far, and this is all Sattvena Rachayantam. Now, another important thing that Prabhupada is pointing out here, something very special. Rathim Rachayantam Esham, Rathim Rachayantam. Now, important point is, okay, God is a person. The supreme absolute truth, Paramatma Tattvam, is a person. Now, moment we say a person, important understanding is, what does that person do? Because a person means like all of us. Like when we meet somebody, what are the simple things that we ask? What's your name? Right? Name is an important thing about. Everyone has a name. At least one name. There's anybody without a name? No. That's why when you fill any application, everything, first thing, name. Every person means he has a name. Next thing, address. Where do you live? Right? Person means he's got a name, he has got an address. Next thing, profession. What do you do? That's what when we meet somebody, we immediately sitting next to somebody, and when you're traveling in the train or somewhere, you meet somebody. What's your name? What do you do? Where do you live? You live here or you live there? These are the standard things that, so these are the characteristics of a person. So now, important question is, if this absolute truth is a person, what does that person do? Now one thing somebody may say, oh, the supreme absolute is a person, means God is a person, means he must be maintaining this world. You see? That's one thing that everyone, that's a general understanding of God. It's a very valid thing. God maintains and looks after this world, looks after all the living entities. But you see, since how long God is doing? Since time eternal. And who is doing? God. God is what? All powerful. If somebody is all powerful and is doing it for a long time, it must be very easy for God to do that. Just like if I ask our mother, can you make one roti? All her life she is doing rotis. It's so easy for her to make roti, or ask your mother to make some rice. It's so easy. Our mother, she's not some supreme person or anything, ordinary mother. Just for a few years, 40 years, 50 years, maybe years, some number of years, she's making rotis and she has become so expert. So easily she can do it. She has to worry about it with great effort. Now my son has asked me to make roti, let me. Nothing. Right? It's so easy. So imagine if our mothers can make roti so easily, for God to maintain this world must be the easiest thing. It must not be occupying too much of his time. Just like for our mothers, making roti is not occupying her whole day. No. So what does God do? This is an important revelation that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu begins. This is called progressive revelation. One level of revelation in the religion is Lord maintains this world, which is a fact too. Lord only is maintaining. But that's not the full understanding. That's why it's called progressive revelation of God. All the acharyas have been greater and greater information about God they have been giving. Prabhupada says that's one of the characteristics of an acharya. He does something new. He gives something additional. And every acharya keeps giving something additional. And now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving further, more than all of the previous acharyas had given. And he's saying that yes, for God to maintain this material world, and according to further in the Vedic literatures, it is said that the material world is where all the conditioned, rebellious souls are, asuya living entities are, which means this is like a prison. Just like the chief minister's primary occupation is not maintaining the prison. What does he do in the morning? The chief minister, when he gets up, he starts thinking, my prisoners, did they get the food? Did they get the roti? Did they get a blanket last night? This is not his work. He has got one department called prison that takes care. Prison. There are so many other loyal, law-abiding citizens. How do I take care of them? That is chief minister's work, isn't it? Practically, I don't think any file connected with prison comes to the chief minister. Not one file. It is not his work. So in another sense, understanding about God, maintaining the material world must not be God's major work. It must be happening. So what does God do? So someone may say, God is the supreme, so he is always exercising his supremacy and constantly telling everyone, see, I am the supreme, I am the supreme. And we also say God is the supreme enjoyer, so he must be thinking, now I must enjoy, I must enjoy, I must enjoy. He's supreme enjoyer, no? But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, no. None of these things are God's primary preoccupation. What is God's primary preoccupation? His occupation is how to please my devotees. How to make my devotees happy. And everything he manifests with his Vishuddha Sattva, Sattvena Rachayantam, everything he manifests is for pleasing the devotee. That is what Prabhupada is revealing here. Let's read this. Purport. Even the quality of goodness here in the material world is not free from the tinges of passion and ignorance. But in the transcendental world, only pure goodness without any tinge of passion or ignorance exists. Therefore, the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his variegated pastimes and paraphernalia are all pure sattvaguna. Sattvena rachayantam. Such variegatedness in pure goodness is exhibited eternally by the Lord for the satisfaction of the devotee. That variegatedness is not even manifest for his satisfaction. It is for the satisfaction of the devotees. Esham ratim. It is out of love for them and it is for pleasing them. All of this is manifestation. Such variegatedness, pure goodness, is exhibited eternally by the Lord for the satisfaction of the devotee. The devotee does not want to see the Supreme Personality of Absolute Truth in voidness or impersonalism. In one sense, absolute transcendental variegatedness is meant only for the devotees and not for others. That is why Prabhupada says, Krishna's only business is Gopi Jana Vallabha, Vraja Jana Ranjana. His only business is how to please my devotees. Just see this grand picture of the spiritual world that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives. Here we are all individuals with our limited powers, and that limited power also not in our control. Law of karma is deciding. And that law of karma, according to Kala, which karma fructifies, that's also not in our control. In those circumstances, we are trying to become, how I can become happy. This is material existence. But if we are in the shelter of Krishna, the Supreme Lord is planning and working how my living entities, my devotees can be happy. Everything is under his control. Every energy is under his control. Kala cannot touch him. It's under his control. Karma, nothing works there in the spiritual world. He decides, it happens. Just see the contrast of the material world. So, it is not an exaggeration to say the material world is a prison. That is how it is. It is all governed by laws. You want to eat in the prison, I want to one extra sweet, one criminal asks, he'll say, no, according to the prison book, only on Saturday you will get sweet. You can't get. You see, like that is the nature of the prison. We desire, we cannot get. Here also, so many people they talk, we have to dream and then once you have the dream, you will get the dream fulfilled. No, it is not so. It's all good to say that because, that inspires people to work and all those things. But actually just by dreaming it doesn't work. Unless your karma is there, it will not work. Nothing will come. So that's how the material world is. On the other hand, in the spiritual world, Krishna is planning how to please the devotees. So it's a very, very extraordinary spiritual creation. And now Kumaras have become aware of that. So Sattvena Sampratiratim Rachayantam Esham. They are saying this. And this can be understood only by Lord's mercy. The spiritual variegatedness, you may go up to Brahman realization, all those things. But spiritual variegatedness, if we have to become enlightened about it, it is by the mercy of the Lord. Anutapa viditair. Now, when we say by the mercy of the Lord, we will understand. So what do we do then? It just depends on the mercy of the Lord. Now, what can I do? I don't have to do anything. No. There is a very nice conversation. Srila Prabhupada explains this very nice, this principle. Srila Prabhupada was so spiritually So clear in all of these realizations. Even in his simple talks, he would bring out some very important revelations. Prabhupada wrote a letter and he would have a conversation in a room with somebody. Something wonderful he would disclose. One such thing happened July of 1976. Prabhupada was in New York and there was a news reporter who had come to interview from some well-known magazine. And Prabhupada was describing about Krishna consciousness. Then at one point, Prabhupada's secretary was there and he started, it was a long, casual, formal, informal discussion. So this secretary started telling about Srila Prabhupada and he said, Prabhupada goes to bed at 10 o'clock in the night and rises at 11:30. And from 11:30, he starts translating the books. So the reporter is astonished to hear, just that? And through the night up to morning, he is translating the books. So you just sleep for just a few hours? And Prabhupada says, yes, 1.5 hours. 10 to 11:30. Just that much? And then Prabhupada says, of course, during the day I take some rest. I take about 2 hours rest. So about 3.5 hours. And then Prabhupada continued to speak. So our work, our philosophy is that we don't sit idle. We work. We constantly work. But we know God is the one who provides. Without God's sanction, we cannot get anything. Without God's favor, we cannot get anything. But we work. We have to be qualified to get the favor of God. This is our philosophy. It's a very interesting thing. It is mercy of God. It is a favor of God. But we have to be qualified to get the mercy of God. So it is mercy of God. God has to give. But there is something that is, we have to have the qualification to get the mercy of God. Prabhupada has said that very nicely here. That's mentioned in the purport also here. In the closing part of the purport, it is stated therefore that only when all contamination is rooted out and the devotee is completely detached from material attractions, can he receive this mercy of the Lord. Which is mercy? This mercy for revelation of that spiritual variegatedness that the Kumaras got. That is what is being referred to. So when it is stated therefore that only when all contamination is rooted out and the devotee, that's referring to this, udgrantayo hrudhi. Hrudhi udgrantayaha. When entirely uprooted, all the granthis, all the contaminations are rooted out and is completely detached from material attractions. Viragaha. Udgrantayo hrudi vidur munayo viragaha. So then, detached from material attractions, can he receive this mercy of the Lord? Only then one can receive the mercy of the Lord. This is a mercy of the Lord. One has to be qualified, and that qualification is freedom from contaminations, material contaminations, and freedom from material attractions. Now we see how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's first point in his Shikshashtakam is purification. Spiritual life is about purification, cleansing our heart. And that is the qualification to get the mercy of the Lord. Okay, it doesn't end there. There's one more thing that Prabhupada is pointing out here. The verse is pointing out. How do we get the qualification? Mercy you have to get for that higher revelation. Now for the mercy you need qualification. So how do we acquire the qualifications? There is a process for that. and that is Druda Bhakti Yogai. By devotional service performed in an unflinching manner, Druda Bhakti Yogair Udgrantayo Hrudi Vidur Munayo Viragaha. So, this is a very important point, that by devotional service, and the Kumaras have realized that, not just devotional service as a hobby, no, with a certain amount of intensity. Druda Bhakti Yogair Udgrantayaha Hrudi Udgrantayaha Viragaha Viduhu. Then we will be able to understand Anutapa Vidithair, by the Lord's mercy. So, all of these are very nicely mentioned. This is the special revelation that the Kumaras are having of the spiritual variegatedness, and by the Lord's mercy. And they are saying that this can happen when one is freed from the contaminations in his heart and free from material attractions. We'll stop here. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.